You made us work, I made us worse. We fell apart 1,000 times, 1,000 times. You moved away, I'm here to stay. I wish I could go back in time, back in time. I'm so sorry that I hurt you so deep. Swear I spent the last few years just trying to change. I'm on my knees and I'm begging you, please. Is there any chance you're thinking about me? If I change my ways, babe, won't you come back to me? Make no mistakes.
Let me go for one day, let me lose myself again. Give me something for the pain, always trying to pretend that I'm not living just a lie. Broken heart and shattered lives. Let me go for one day, let me lose myself. Oh, I knew how this would end. Oh, I knew that it would die, that we would come to this, that we would say goodbye.
You are watching a Healing Element Podcast special. Show your support by subscribing to the Healing Element Podcast YouTube channel. Also, follow us on Instagram at the Healing Element Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Healing Element Podcast. I am your host, Kai Marie, and I am here with Brandon Jones, who is definitely a part of the Healing Element Podcast. I don't know how many times you've been on. I think this is like number 10 or
I lost count.
Lost count. So happy to have you back. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Black men and taking control of the narrative. This is a 3-part series that we are doing, so make sure you check out the description box so you can know what topics we're going to be covering. This series is called the Straight Shots No Chaser because we are coming with truth. And it's not, some people may find what we discuss or the points that we that are shared hard to swallow. But the thing is that we have to start speaking truth into our community and to each other. So with that being said, welcome Brandon back to the podcast. Yay!
Thank you for having me back. Yes, it has been plenty of time since I've been here, but it's always a joy to, resurface and come back and have nice, honest, thought-provoking conversation. Yes, it's no shot. It is, we're going to go straight shots with no chaser, but we're not taking any shots at anyone. And we want to make sure that we're giving thought-provoking information so people can think, because there's a lot happening right now, especially when it comes to Black men. We're going to discuss probably a few different Black men today and the things that have just been happening recently in media. But these are not new issues for Black men, and these are things, unfortunately, that have continued time and time again. And what ends up changing is the name of the Black men, but the result ends up being the same. So I look forward to digging into the dialogue.
Yes, it is going to be it's going to be interesting. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about why I had approached Brandon about this topic. Let's see here. If I can get my screen up. So this was about, I would say, a week or two ago that I saw. It may be hard to see, but basically there's been trending on Twitter regarding the barbershop. And if anyone knows that this is a space for Black men, go get their hair cut, and also a space for them to socialize and just kind of, discuss, have fun. Brandon can go in more detail of that than I could. But I saw this trending as far as how toxic the barbershop is, and how, especially for the LGBT community. So when we talk about this, this is not, as Brandon said, attacking anyone or any group. This is just to have a conversation about some patterns that we're seeing trending in social media, also in the on the news. So this is something that I saw, and I mentioned it to Brandon. I was like, I don't know if you saw this whole thing with the barbershop, and it was just a lot of the language was speaking disparagingly to straight Black men, and talking a little bit about, not a little bit, a lot about how toxic they are, how toxic the barbershop is, how it's misogynistic, how many women, they don't feel comfortable bringing their son to get a haircut, and also members of the LGBT community do not feel safe going to the barbershop either, because a lot of homophobic type of conversations that are going on. So I do want to talk a little bit, not a little bit, we're going to go in depth about this, but also to kind of put it in context. I do, Brandon, want you to talk a little bit about when we look at the relationship with that Black men have had to in this society historically. Does that help us understand how we got to this point where we can see this type of trending topic on social media? Oh, I can't hear you.
I said it should help us, but I think that we continue to struggle because of the narrative that we've accepted about Black men doesn't allow us to have a historical reference to what has actually happened. And what I mean by that is Black men, from being captured, due to losing war over on the continent, and being Africans, to being sold and enslaved as enslaved Africans and brought to this hemisphere, we've always been a commodity to this country. We've always been a tool for economic growth for other people in this country. And when slavery ended, the main two core functionalities that we had as enslaved Africans remain so for us moving forward. Those main two purposes were physicality and sexuality. So we were the labor class. We were the skilled laborers who built this country. We hear this all the time. Black people built this country, which is true. We were forced to. That was our role in this whole society, was to build. And we build homes and buildings. We build, railroad tracks, all these things. We did those things. We were the ones who were pulling the cotton and the rice and the tobacco and the fruits down in Florida. Those are mainly Black men. During the transatlantic slave trade, mostly Black men came over, not a lot of women. But there were women who did come over that were African women who got enslaved and became, at that time, Negroes. Or enslaved Africans who later became Negroes. So our disposition in this society has always been bottom rung, bottom feeder, peasant, slave, worker. That's always been it. So that's the physicality piece. The sexuality piece is one that we don't talk about often, but is very common, is at one point in time, 1808, the importing of slaves became illegal. However, slavery didn't end till 1865. So what happened for 57 years? What happened? We had to breed. We had to breed slaves to keep this American capitalistic engine running. So they would take what they called Mandingo slaves in some parts of the country, and they would take Mandinka slaves, and they would take these Mandingo slaves and they would breed them to build more slaves and keep this thing moving. Just like we breed dogs and horses and things of that nature today, that's what happened to us. So in a certain extent, when we look at Black men today, when we look at Black people today, we are GMO Negroes. Like literally, we were genetically modified at that point in time to get to where we are today. So part of me is like, that's the historical trauma. Part of me is that's the racism, white supremacy that has brought us to where we are today. But the other part of me is, at some point, we have to have some agency and reverse that functionality so we don't continue to get ourselves into these situations that we see today. So those are the main two things. Remember, fornication, sexuality, and then physicality, what we can do with our bodies. And we see that replicated over time. Once slavery ended, we got into what we call the Reconstruction era. And what happened? Well, we don't have slaves, but now we have sharecroppers. And then if you get out of line, or we suspect you to do something, we can arrest you and make you a convict lease, put you on a convict lease, and now you're a convict, and now you're working in a different state on a railroad or a whole nother plantation against your will, and you've been criminalized. Again, physicality. But then look at the sexuality piece that happens during that time as well. You start to see how the fantasizing of black men's bodies, fantasizing about our phalluses and things of that nature, and then putting us in zoos and having us naked and comparing us to monkeys and all types of stuff. Like, there's always been this intrigue around the sexuality of black men. Let's fast forward. Let's get into the early 1900s, until the 1920s. What do we start to see popping off? We start to see boxing being prize fighting, Jack Johnson. Then we also have the invent of what? The Harlem Renaissance, jazz. Who are these great jazz players, these sex symbols in these bebop suits? Black men. Who did they have access to? Black women, white women who came to them jazz clubs, and white men who were doing a thing on that level. So we've had this sexual interchange racially all throughout time. We don't talk about it because we feel like it's hurting our masculinity and our manhood. But then we start to see this is stuff that happened. Those jazz clubs, yeah, there were gay people at them jazz clubs doing things in the back. There was white women getting they freak on with black men, and then there were black men getting they freak on with black women. Like, these things were happening in these spaces. And those were seen as like those taboo spaces, but those spaces were popping. Let's keep moving on down the line, right? So let's move to the civil rights movement. What's one of the things that we talk about when we want to really have a good conversation about Dr. Martin Luther King? Well, he had all these women, right? That ain't something new to us. That is nothing new. When we talk about watch the movie Ray. What did Ray do? He was moving around town during that time. We got boxers, Sugar Ray Leonard, all these people. They had women. They had access to women. Sexuality. Then you start to have the whole let's bring black men into the military thing. What happened when those black men went overseas in Europe and they got exposure to them white women, them Italian women, them German women, right? What happened when they went over to the Vietnam War and got exposure to them Vietnam women? Like, we can't act like that's saying stuff that we have not seen before. Like, everything that we see today has a historical connection point, but we just like to not tell the truth about it, and we sweep it under the rug. We can't keep sweeping it under the rug if we want to change the narrative on black men. So black men haven't done anything more different than other men, but our social positioning in this country has been to be at the bottom and stay at the bottom for so long that when we do those things, they get highlighted very different. White men have been conquesting sexually across this planet for centuries. This is how they get into colonization. Hell, that's how they had bargaining to even trade Africans to get enslaved. They would send people in, get inside that tribe. Sometimes those folks who are in power on the continent will give up daughters and nieces and all types of stuff to these white guys in conquest. That's how they would get it. How would they get people to speak the language? They would not necessarily marry in, but they would fornicate their way in there. It wasn't just like they came in with guns. Like, persuasion is the best way to overturn things. But if we don't read books, if we want to romanticize our history and act like the way that white people did things was just clubbing us over the head the whole time, no, their best form of persuasion or best form of power is persuasion. And they've been doing it for centuries. And sex is one of those things that is very persuasive. So when we fast forward to today and we look at Derek Jackson and we look at Deshaun Watson, and we look at these two black men who are in the middle of sexual crisis at this very moment, it's nothing different than what we've seen before, unfortunately. We have Deshaun Watson, who's got 14 pending cases on him, and they're saying there may be more due to lewd sex acts. He's an athlete. This brother's 6'3", 6'4". He's multi-millionaire. He's going to get sexual access. I play football. I was recruited. When I went on my recruiting trips, guess what? There was girls there. I wasn't no damn Deshaun Watson. I wasn't even close. I was being recruited D1 and then D2 and then D3, and there was girls on all three levels, okay? So let's not play these games and act like sex is not utilized for black men. Kendrick Lamar said it best. I can't even remember the song, but he says, white men, they focus on money. Asian men, they focus on money. Black men, we focus on punani. That's what Kendrick Lamar said. And that's where we're at. We've been focused so much on sexuality and sexual just like parts of our identity are validated through sexual conquest that's where we stop. Is get money, get women, get flashy things, trinkets, as Mr. Fuller likes to say, and then be happy. But that doesn't lead to power. That just leads to passive. You just get pacified by having objects, and you don't really end up having power. So we'll get into that as we go through our series. But I wanted to make some historical reference connected to where we're at today, because we're really not seeing anything different. We're just seeing different Black men in those spaces.
Right. So true. And thanks for breaking that down, Brandon. And I think what I have noticed over the past couple years is more so of, let's see, how do I want to say this?
Don't be self-editing yourself now. Don't be scared.
Right. So I just have seen more, like, for example, what I just posted, as far as this whole thing with the barbershop.
Oh, yeah.
I just seen, as far as the language that's being used, if you didn't, and sometimes you can't tell, right? So you always can't tell on the Twitter world who is actually doing the tweets. It could be a white person behind the keyboard and their profile is a black face. So you can't always tell. However, with that being said, it seems as though this need to, I guess it's like control Black male sexuality or something. It seems as though that type of language that you would typically hear from the white community that we are now have adopted. And when I say we, I'm seeing more of that come from some Black women and also members of the LGBT community. And when I say that, what comes to mind also, this was a while back, and I don't remember the name of the show, but Genuine, I think he was on a reality show or something.
He was on not couple. It was a couples retreat. It was one of those couple therapy shows that he was on. Yes.
And I think a trans person tried to push up on him, and he's like, no, I don't. And he was, called transphobic and everything. So I just go back to what you were saying historically, but also this need for some entity, whether it's white people or whoever, to control Black male sexuality. And if Black men are saying no, it's kind of like, well, how dare you? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we've manifested to a point in time and space where white people don't need to manage Black men's sexuality. I think that academia, the second wave feminist movement, and what we currently have today, they have taken that over. And white people don't need to be the face of it anymore. It's already at a place in space where Black men's sexuality needs to be policed. When we hear things like toxic masculinity, oftentimes the face of that is Black men, unfortunately. Even though in toxic masculinity, that term and the toxic things that men do have been happening for centuries, and they haven't always been with us. But we have been identified as the white people of the Black community, which
sorry about that.
Insane. No, it's good. I got you. I'm right with you. So not Black men, but straight Black men are the white people of Black people. One, you have to be confused on what racism, white supremacy is to even agree with this statement. Two, we got to watch who's putting these statements out. It's the Root. If you are a fan of the Root, I'm sorry, but they have not been pro-Black family at all. And that means that they are very anti-Black male. Look at their articles and look what they put out. They're not very favorable to Black men. And I guarantee you they're about to have a field day on my brother Derek Jackson. And I'm not a fan of him, to be honest with you. But he is about to get lit up in these articles by them if they haven't already started. Yeah. And when you are anti-Black men, to me, you are anti-Black family. And one of the things that I've been noticing is that the ideal of what Black family is starting to morph. And it's not including Black men anymore. It's including Black women, Black children, and other partners. And those partners may be other Black women. They may be other women. They may be other non-Black men. But I don't see a lot of Black men in there. So there's something happening to the narrative of Black men where Black men are getting pushed out. We are being targeted as the oppressors in the Black community. Now, I grew up in a domestic violence household. I talk about that's one of the things that has led me to the career that I have is talking about trauma. Did I see toxic masculinity growing up? Absolutely. But I've never had in my mom, and she'll tell you this, and she's been on my podcast and have said similar things. My mom always wanted us to be Black men. She never wanted us to strip our masculinity away, even though she was in an abusive relationship. She knew the things that were happening weren't right, and she told her sons not to emulate those things. But she also understood the importance of being strong men and being constructive men and being men of value, and not high value men, but men of value, not just having possessions, but what are we putting out? That's what my mother put into me, even though she was in domestic violence also. She never tried to strip our masculinity away. She never tried to protect us from the world where we couldn't actually be boys and play, have fun, bump our heads, get our nails dirty. But that's what we're seeing today with a lot of young Black boys. Most young Black boys aren't allowed to be boys. They're being forced to be young little men, and they're not ready. We need to have the boyhood stage, and we're not allowed to. So when you're not allowed to have that boyhood stage, and then you're in a male body, but you haven't matured, what ends up happening? You start to do interesting things. You start to do things that are toxic, things that aren't good for you, because you're still working from either an adolescent or a child mindset, because you have arrested development. And that's where we are with a lot of Black males, unfortunately. Now, when it comes to this notion of Black men being the white men of the Black community, which is it's even just crazy to even say that, what we do not have a nice functional understanding of racism, white supremacy. What power do Black men hold in the Black community? Black men, if we break down some of the worst statistics in this country, I mean, we can put up Mr. Fuller's 9 areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, sex, and war. We break down each one of those categories by race and ethnicity, and then by gender. Black men are in the worst position. We look at HIV/AIDS. Let's go to sex. Let's look at HIV/AIDS. Who has the worst cases in HIV/AIDS? All right. When we go to education, who has some of the worst academic achievement in this country? Black males. We go to labor. Who has the worst unemployment in this country? Black males. We go to law. Who is most disproportionately hurt by law practices in this country? Black men. When we go to entertainment, who is least representative and who's worst represented in the media? Black men. We are brutes, thugs, criminals, docile. That's our image. The only time we're promoted something well is when we are athletically gifted, and that's it, or sexually gifted. That's it, right? So when you show up like the Bremerton guy, the Duke, then you get celebrated. But when you are, a nice thug criminal, you play on one end, he's the mayor. On the other end, he's the biggest drug dealer in Chicago. It's like on the show The Shy, for folks who don't know the reference. Then you're celebrated as the Black man when you do something bad. So if we look at the 9 areas of people activity and we break it down by race and ethnicity, Black men are at the bottom of all statistical areas. So when we talk about dominance and white people and white supremacy and saying Black men are the white people, that don't make no sense to me. It's like, what are we talking about? And why do we have this narrative that we continue to push out? Do Black men do toxic behavior? Absolutely. Do we cheat? Yes, Black men cheat. Okay, I'm going to go against the song. Black men cheat. Can we be abusive? Absolutely. I grew up in a domestic violence home. Can we be no good? Can we talk to you crazy? Absolutely. Can we be deadbeat fathers and leave our families and our children behind? Yes. All right. Can we be criminals? Yes, we can. Right? We can do all those things. What are some other the bad things that Black men do? Can we molest children and rape people? Yes, we can do those things. Does that mean that we have power to do those things and get away with it? Absolutely not. Are those toxic behaviors? Absolutely. Are those abusive behaviors? Absolutely. But we're not encouraging that foolishness and that craziness. Now, I don't know any Black men that encourage it. I know that there are some things that we need to improve amongst our manhood circles that are harmful and that can shift the mindsets of men so that these things don't happen, like locker room talk and like the way that we engage and even the music that we create and we promote. Some of those things can be better, but that doesn't mean that we are the white people or black people. There's not one area where black men hold dominance, not even the church. I mean, yeah, he might be the pastor, yada, yada, yada. But honestly, without the women, what is he? What is he? Outside of the black church, where do black men really have societal power? Because it ain't in the damn community. And it's barely in our households. And I got 2 daughters, and I'm married to a black woman. And y'all might think I got some power, but I got as much power as you think in this house. Trust me, they got way more say so if something gonna happen up in this house than I do. Now, I might be the breadwinner, I might be dad, I might be hubby, but they got a lot more influence on what happened in this house than in other houses. And that's the black community in a nutshell, to be completely honest. So I'm breaking all that down, and I'm kind of giving a wide scope, but I want us to think about this statement and what this even means. And if you believe this is true, please give me at least some type of evidence on where we hold social power to control black men, or sorry, to control black women, and not LGBTQ plus black men. I was gonna say same gender loving, but I know people ain't familiar with that term. Mm-hmm. But where do we control them? And if we want to talk about the barber shop, which is like one of the last places of business that black men actually kind of hold some control over outside of the church to a certain extent. If we want to talk about the barbershop, are there homophobic things that happen at barbershop? Absolutely. Does the barbershop culture need to be shifted? Absolutely. It's funny because not the last time I got my haircut, but the time before that, I was just having a conversation in my barbershop about homophobia because this guy came in right before me and he's in the middle of transitioning. And this guy's like 50 years old. So in the barbershop, they're like, why is he so scared to talk to us about what's going on? So my barber actually cuts his hair, or it's going to soon. I don't know the person's pronouns. I'm going to say him for now, but I know this person was transitioned based on what they were saying. So my barber was saying that when it was time to pay, the client, the person came in, was acting real funny. And like the person had a hoodie on and they had their hands in the hoodie the whole time, like in the hoodie, the front pocket the whole time. So when it came time to pay, like kind of paid weird with the money. And he was like, that was really weird. And then one of the other barbers said, oh, you didn't see he had his nails done. And he was like, what? He's like, yeah, he went, got the manicure, got the manicure. And he's like, he was trying to avoid showing you his nails probably. And my barber was like, damn, I didn't even think of that. He was like, I wouldn't even say anything. But this person who got their haircut, they were breaking it down because there was another barber in the barber shop who is she's a lesbian. So she identifies more as a stud-like lesbian, right? Mm-hmm. So she was saying, I talked with him before and he was telling me that he was thinking about going through a transition. So we were having a conversation in a barber shop about why would he not feel comfortable paying just because his nails were done. And then I had shared with them, I was like, well, think about this. This person, you guys told me this person's like 50 years old. And this person has been gay all their life and probably has been, interested in transitioning and being out for a long time. Now at 50 years old, where there's a climate of acceptance to LGBTQ plus population, this person finally feels comfortable enough to come out, but not in every space. Because throughout this person's whole life, they haven't been able to feel comfortable coming out in barbershops or other places. So that person's still trying to fill out if this is a safe environment or not. So yeah, they're going to pay weird. They might not even come in on particular days like a Friday or Saturday where there's a lot of traffic because guess what? They don't want people looking at them, questioning, asking questions and all types of things like that. That's acceptable. And as a barbershop, you guys need to talk about that because guess what? There's other folks from the LGBTQ plus population that want to come in and get their haircut. Now, I frequent this barbershop a lot. I know that my barber and several other barbers cut a lot of women who are in the LGBTQ plus population's hair. They come in with no problem because they can hold their own in that masculine space, talk about women, talk about sports or whatever. And I've seen those conversations. But when it gets to men who are either transitioning to be trans women or men who are just gay and they're out, it is an uncomfortable space. And we do need to work on that being a more inclusive culture. But we can't work on that being an inclusive culture if we're going to sit there and just bash men and talk about how awful men are, because that doesn't do anything to move the culture forward. Really what that does is set up a wall and say, okay, you want to attack me? Well, F you. I'm not going to talk to you. Like, That's not helpful. But when it comes to Twitter, and when it comes, and this stuff leaks out from academia, where we get to cancel culture, we don't even provide an opportunity to have the dialogue because of the pain and the trauma that shows up, and we just start attacking each other, which is not helpful. I'm gonna pause
It's
there.
true.
Let you get in.
No, it's so true, because I mean, if you're writing articles saying how straight Black men are the white men of the Black community, or just vilifying straight Black men, who's going to want to open up and have a dialogue?
Right.
I mean, you're not setting the proper frame, the proper environment to have a conversation that could move the needle forward.
Right.
One thing I did want to mention, Brandon, as well, is that when we look at where we are now, and then you also started out talking about historically what's going on, and we are starting to even see history kind of rewriting itself, if you will. So I want to bring up these two. I'm sure everyone, there's a lot being said about these two films in which Black men were portrayed as, for the Harriet Tubman, I think it was Bigger Long. He was the slave catcher. He was the one that was going out to try to capture Harriet to sell her back into slavery. And from my understanding, from what I read, I did not watch the film, but I read a lot of articles about it, that his motivation for doing this was not only the money, but to have access to white women. Apparently that was in the film. And so I don't know during this time what Black man would be running around with a gun at all. So that is interesting in itself. The other is the Madam C.J. Walker film that was on, I believe, Netflix, in which, again, Black men, what you're seeing is, instead of this being an issue on race, you're seeing that they're trying to make it about gender. So can you speak to that? Of course, we see what's happening now, but we also see that happening when we're seeing our historical figures, stories being brought to the big screen. We're seeing a gender dynamic there.
Yeah. There's several things when we talk about media that we have to pay attention to. When we have these history pieces that come back out, most people are not well read. Most people are not reading books on Harriet Tubman. Most people didn't even know who Madam C.J. Walker was until this film came out. Let's just be real about it. Mm-hmm. And since we're not well read, when we see these movies, we take this as the reality being replayed and retold to us. But we have to understand, when any entertainment is being produced, it is being produced first for entertainment value. Secondly, especially pieces like this, for education. That's why they say these are based on true events. Not these were the true events. These are based on true events, and they will change things. And this just isn't in the Black films. This is in all these time periods. They will modify storylines to connect with the modern audience. This is what's done in show business. And if you don't know that, and you're not well read, or you didn't study these people at some point in time, or you didn't watch an actual documentary film that went over some things that actually happened, and you're just watching the kind of like the display from a theatric kind of standpoint, the dramatized version of it, you're getting like maybe 15%, maybe 20% actual history, and the rest of it's entertainment value. So when you see these male characters portraying modern day things like wanting access to the white woman or the sabotaging of Madam C.J. Walker, because I've heard about that. I haven't seen it, but I heard about there's a character in the Madam C.J. Walker movie who was like sabotaging all her moves. Now, from what I know about her actual story, the person who was sabotaging her was another Black woman, but they changed it to a Black man, which is very fascinating. Which is very fascinating, right? Mm-hmm. So to avoid the Black woman on Black woman piece, because if that happens, that movie's going to get a lot more flack. Oh, you're just trying to pit Black women versus each other. Instead of telling the factual pieces of what happened, we're going to flip it and make this a male character because it fits the modern day narrative a lot better, and it's going to keep the conversation juicy, right? So this is what we have to keep in mind when it comes to these historical pieces, that we're not getting the full truth, and you're probably only getting about anywhere between, I'll say, 10 to 20% of actual fact of what happened. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is these pieces are put out to continue to push the modern day narrative. I'll say it that way. 12 Years a Slave, the Django Unchained, all these films, when these pieces come out, they're matching the current environment of what's happening, or they're pushing you to have ideals of what they want you to kind of focus on next. This is how propaganda and entertainment works. There are not a lot of movies or shows that have black men in a good light. And we have to understand that black men are not in a good light socially right now. And if we don't get that, when we watch these shows for entertainment and feel like we've been educated, we're really pushing that narrative that black men ain't nothing even further. For example, I'm a composer to another movie that just came out that I did see, Coming to America 2. All right. Coming to America 2 had a very modern narrative around it. I don't know. Did you see it? Have you seen it?
I didn't see it.
All right. Have you heard anything about it?
Yes, I've heard reviews. They have not been positive.
Yep. And guess what? I understand why. Because one, it's a sequel to a classic. And two, it's PG-14, the sequel. So it's not going to be as raw and edgy as the first movie. This movie was more of a comedy that was geared towards family. This movie had a very pro-family message. Why is that getting negative reviews? Because right now, when it comes to black people, we don't have a pro-family narrative. So this movie is very courageous just from that standpoint. But since you see a black family attempting to be a family, even knowing the trauma and disconnection happened, that opposes the narrative of what black men are supposed to be. Now, do you want to see the movie? Because I can give you a spoiler right now, but I'll try not to spoil it.
So spoiler alert. I'm probably, to be honest with you, I'm probably not going to watch the film.
All right, there you go.
I don't know if that revokes my black card, but...
No, you still black. Don't worry. Have you seen Inkwell? Do you even know what that is? She's lying. Black card. She does not love being black. She does not love being black.
Oh my God.
No, I'm just messing with you. Google Inkwell later. It's a great movie. Okay, so in Coming to America 2, what ends up happening is it's really connecting and connecting dots back to the first movie. Have you seen Coming to America 1? That's really a black card.
Come on, really?
All right. Just making sure. All right, so it's connecting dots to the first movie. But one of the things they put a spin on was Prince Hakeem ended up having a baby out of wedlock. So he got high and drunk, ended up sleeping with, oh my God. She's got my last name. What is that woman's name? She drives me crazy. Damn. I'll think of it in a second. But anyway.
If everybody remembers, just drop it in the comment box.
Her last name is Joan. She's got crazy hair. She's on Saturday Night Live. Damn. What is her name?
Oh, she has this.
Her.
I don't remember her name. Does anyone remember you can drop it in the chat.
Leslie Jones. I got it.
Leslie Jones.
So they end up.
That's a whole episode in itself.
Oh my God. I mean, she actually did a good job in the movie. I'll give her some credit because, oh boy. Yeah, we get into the LGBTQ plus thing with her too. That's a whole nother conversation. So they end up having a baby in the movie. So he ends up having a son. But back home in Africa, he doesn't have any male heirs, and his dad ends up dying. Okay, so he's gonna now be king, and he has to prep typically a son to be king, but he doesn't have one until he finds out. Oh yeah, you do. Back in America, you have a son, and then he goes to find his son. He ends up finding his son. The son and the mom, Leslie Jones, are not in good shape. His uncle's Tracy Morgan, so they're all kind of like. I don't know if they live together or not, but it's a whole bunch of black folks in one apartment, and they all they're just making it, right? They scraping it and making it, right? So he comes and he's like, "Look, you're a prince." He's like, "I ain't no prince." And then they end up like dropping this suitcase of money and gold, and they're like, "Oh, let's roll." So they end up rolling out, going back to Africa, and now he's trying to teach his son how to be a king, and he's trying to teach him a different culture. This is very, very important. So he tries to teach him a different culture, but he's not vibing with it. He's not himself. So there's a woman, fine woman too, from South Africa. There's this woman in there.
That's also another podcast.
Yes. South African American women kind of like. I think there's some genetic things there that they look. It's a whole nother thing, but that's all nothing. I have a special place in my heart for African women. So, so she's helping the prince kind of understand himself, and she says, hey, "You need to be like your dad. When he went to America, he didn't compromise who he was. So as you come here, why are you compromising who you are? Instead of trying to be the Princess Zamunda, and like the Zamunda way, be who you are as the prince," which was a great message. And then he started to relax and started to teach them about himself, and he started to learn. Prince Hakeem back in Africa had 3 daughters. Now, this is a very, very, very good. It's a good movie on principle, not very funny though. So Prince Hakeem has 3 daughters. One of his daughters is preparing to be the queen because he didn't have no sons from what they knew. So in her mind, she's always grown up. She's the oldest to be the queen. So when she finds out, she has automatic issues with him. And it's just the black male female dynamic in brother and sister form. And they're just bumping heads right away. And even the younger sister right under him, who's actually Eddie Murphy's daughter, she has issues too. But the youngest daughter, there's 3 daughters. The youngest one, she's kind of on the fence. She's cool with him, but her other older sisters are doing what black women do. Girl, you can't trust him. Leave him alone. Like they're just doing the sister version of it. So the little girl don't know how to really like play this because she's like, this is our brother. Like y'all tripping, but they doing what they've been socialized to do, but it's just in a different form. So over time in the movie, the older daughters kind of take them, they take liking to him and they start working together and understand, we can do this thing together. And also what ends up happening to Eddie Murphy's character is he has to compromise the old traditional way of living versus the new traditional way of living, which is you can have your family and it can be okay, but you also have to provide opportunities to those who deserve, which is how we should be as black people today. So what he ultimately ends up doing is he makes his son still the prince, but he makes him an ambassador to America so he can go back home but still have his lineage, and he makes his daughter the queen. And I was like, man, I watched that whole movie. I didn't laugh but like 2 times, but the principle listen, the principle of that movie is very important for us. So I know you don't want to watch it, but if you look at it from that standpoint, that is an excellent movie of how we need to look at modern family. Understand that, we have blended families and things happen, but we have to make sure that we take care of each other, that we heal, and that we understand the things that have gone wrong and the things that can go right and move forward in the future. If we look at old traditional ways of having family, we are going to continue to hurt each other because there's so much pain and trauma there that we have to be able to move forward. That's why I think that movie is getting a lot of flack because it's pro-family and it's not the typical BS. And that is why I think Eddie Murphy's getting flack for it. I think the movie's getting bad reviews. One, it ain't funny. It ain't, but guess what? Sometimes stuff ain't got to be funny if the message is right. And I think that if you watch that movie and set the message, it's okay. But trust me, you're going to laugh maybe 2 or 3 times. And that's it. So.
No, I mean, with that, it definitely now I'm leaning more towards checking it out now. But what you're saying is so true. And what happens when you don't control your narrative, don't control your story, and you are living in a racist system that wants you to be portrayed in a certain light. And if those are the only people that are telling your stories, of course, you're just going to see a lot of dysfunction. Right. And you see that in all of the, what is it? Those Atlanta Housewives and all those
any black show with love in the title.
Yes.
Or Housewife, it's even toxic. Black Ink Crew. It's think about that. All our visions of relationships that are pushed are all toxic. And they're not just toxic to black men and black women. It's toxic across the board. The men don't trust each other. The women fight every episode. It's all sneaky. And if those are the repetitive images and kind of the idols that you should try to be like, and then you see that replicated in real life, like with Derek Jackson, then where's the hope in our relationships outside of us modeling them in real life? We don't have any visions of this. And that's why I think that Coming to America 2 is an important film.
Well, I will definitely check it out. And I think this is a great segue into our next topic. Brandon, take it away. I'm sure everybody has seen this story. And would that be, that's all I'm going to say. I think Brandon's got it from here.
Woo! Man, the hot topic. Oh man, I'll preface this a couple different ways. I'm gonna go with where I feel currently about this situation. I feel like there was dirty macking happening all across the board. I kind of feel bad for Derrick Jackson just a little bit, but I see the game that's about to be played. Okay, you always got to, in a capitalistic world, you always got to see the play. You always got to see how we gonna get the bag, and I see the bag coming right here. This photo is the bag photo right here. Like when you in a year or two, when you see these two, the bag is gonna be there, and it's gonna have a nice cross right on the bag. Thank you, Jesus. Right. All right. So for those who have been living under a rock, this man here in the photo is Derrick Jackson. This is his wife. I think her name is Nakima, something like that. I can't remember. Dakia, something like that. I don't remember her name, but this is Derrick Jackson. Derrick Jackson has made a living over the last 6 to 8 years, really promoting Black women being better. Black, pretty much men ain't nothing. And Black women, you can do better all by yourself. Men should accept you who you are. He's just really been pandering to Black women. There is a lane for that. He's like the opposite of Kevin Samuels. Kevin Samuels is going to tell you how it is. Derrick Jackson's going to tell you what you want to hear. That's kind of those two polar opposites. Now, Derrick Jackson has been preaching a message about how Black men need to be better in X, Y, and Z area. But what we've recently found out, but his wife already knew, is he hasn't been living that message, and he's been a serial cheater through this whole time. Now, just so you understand, Derrick Jackson played football at Tuskegee University. The man's like 6'5". He's got to be at least 270. He's chiseled. I mean, genetically gifted. So the brother's going to get, and he's a good-looking brother, got a nice smile, all that good stuff. He's going to get play from women. And when you're sitting in your car year after year, week after week, singing the praises of Black women, down in any Black male who's done anything wrong in the public eye, you're going to get Black women that are going to flock to you, and they're going to be in your DMs. And that's very tempting. I told Kai earlier, there's women in my DMs. I ain't Derrick Jackson. I ain't nowhere close. So I know his DMs is lit. Can you imagine? Now, the thing is, when you are a figure like him who's written several books, he's definitely, if he's not a millionaire, he's close. He has to be mid to high 6 figures with the amount of things that he does and the social media influence that he has. He has to be, if you're going to cheat, you need to be smarter, but you can't be hypocritical. And right now he's getting dragged all throughout social media, and he is now the new face of what I call the NAS phenomenon, which stands for Negroes Ain't Ish. There you go. He is the new face of that. And he's going to be the face of that for at least the next few months. I'll say the next quarter, because the internet has a short memory. And there's gonna be another Negro who substitutes his face. Hopefully, my name ain't there. You ain't never gonna see me doing that, but somebody else is gonna be there, and then we're gonna be, on that person, and Derrick Jackson's gonna fall to the wayside. But for right now, this is him. Now he cheat. The person who broke this was Tasha K. Shout out to her, very popular YouTuber. She's got all the wine. She don't call it the tea. She call it the wine, and she brings you all the drama that happens. And one of his mistresses came out and had a conversation with Tasha, gave her the information, and she aired them out. Now, there's wrongdoing on her part. Now, we don't know what her motives were at this time to come out with this, because the cheating that took place with Derrick Jackson happened last year. Derrick Jackson also got married the cheating happened last July. Derrick Jackson got married last August. He said he was separated from his wife at the time. Okay, which that's a whole nother thing. But the wife knew about the cheating. So the speculation and things that are happening right now is the wife going to leave? But she came out pretty much and said yesterday in the video, in the multiple videos yesterday, that she knew about it, and he's a man of God and he's reforming and yada, yada, yada. They're moving on. So she ain't going nowhere. And he wrote a book talking about the book's title is called Heal Together. So the play is already moving forward. It's got both of them on the cover, eye to eye, hand to hand, just like they were in that video. His grip wasn't as tight though. And it's called Heal Together. So the cheating piece, it seems like they've already kind of worked through it, and now the public knows about it. Right. So now you're getting blasted through public. But look, He's gonna spin this and he's gonna come out on top. And if he doesn't, he does not have the right people handling his business. Because right now his response has been, I'm a reformed man of God, really. And his wife has already been there. And if you look at her Instagram, it looks like she's been going through it for a while, by the way, with his cheating and all his stuff. She needs some sisters to love up on her and give her a virtual hug, because she looked like she's been going through it. And I'm not gonna sit there and talk about the bonnet hat that she had on or none of that stuff, because people laugh and they said it's a bonnet.
What was the?
She said it was a hat.
I was wondering if that was a part of the play, because I don't know. I just don't know why.
She needs a hug. She needs some women to love up on her. But don't worry, her shining moments, if they play this right, her shining moments coming. She gonna be on the Red Table Talk. She gonna be on the Breakfast Club. She gonna be on The View. And she gonna have 3 different wigs on for each one of them interviews. Please believe it. So let's not play. Her time is coming. Yeah, I can see Vivica Fox right now licking her lips on Fox, so waiting for her. Come on over here.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
They can spin this thing very well. They can spin this thing very well. And they can get that church bag now, because he's a reformed man. Can you imagine his next book? Broke into, from down in the pits to in the hands of God. Man reinvents himself. Healing the wounds that I caused to all the women. Like, he's about to clean up on this. He could. And I'm
sure the next book is in the works. Because even when I watched the one where she had the bonnet on, and he was already talking about the book that they wrote together. Hands, the grip was strong. And my thing is this, being in the space of wellness, and you're trying to encourage people to live a healthy lifestyle, and you always use yourself as an example, right? You talk about the struggles that you had, what you had to do to overcome and to begin to change your life. But it's always important never to paint yourself as this perfect person. Yeah. Right. Because I have flaws. We all have flaws. But when you start to paint yourself as the ideal, and you're starting to create this image that you are walking this perfect life, and that everything that you're saying to the public is matching what you do in private. And when the reality hits that that's not the case, I think that's the issue. So if you're going to be in a space and telling women, don't date these type of men, but then your behavior is like the men that you're telling them not to date, and you're painting the picture that you're not like that, you're going to have problems. And I don't know if he thought that he could keep this under the radar for forever. But this stuff always comes to the light. And I think the red pill, the
red pill community
is loving this right now.
They've been after him. The thing that really hurts, because honestly, like I said at the beginning, I feel kind of bad for him, but really who I feel bad for is Black women. Because the optics of Derrick Jaxn is the ideal Black man. He's 6'5", chisel body. He's probably well endowed, 6-figure earner, lives in Atlanta, has a great smile. He sings the praises of Black women. And then boom, he does the thing that we already have the narrative on. We ain't nothing. And Black women, there are Black women today that are hurt, who've listened to Derrick Jaxn for years. I mean, Derrick Jaxn got some of these girls through college, through their bad relationship, through their pregnancy. And now here the ideal of a Derrick Jaxn has just been crushed for these women. And these women have invested so much of their emotions, their time and energy into this type of man, this ideal. And now they're in pain. And who are they going to go to next? Right. Like, this is why I'm saying his wife can really make, she can be bigger than him by this, because that's who they'll go to is, sis, how did you get through this, sis? Help me, sis. Right. And all she got to do is put a different outfit on. I'm not going to get into it. Put some lip gloss on, get that light, get that ring light, and she's out of here. Yeah. She's the Black woman who survived the archetype Black men that all Black women want, and she made him stay. Girl, what do you know that we don't? Please tell us, sis, because we want that man too.
Right.
This thing can go, man. I need to be an agent. I'm trying to talk to Derek Jackson right now because I
You
just want
should
him.
send him a message. I'm
I
sure he
might
could use some
look, man.
assistance
I
right
got
now.
2 psychology degrees, man. We can make this work, brother. Let me help you. I mean, this thing can be. I'm serious. The black women who invested so much of their time and energy on this ideal man, you got to understand, most people are very surface. We feel first, especially black folks, because we haven't been conditioned to be critical thinkers. We've been
Right.
conditioned to be emotional extremists. And what I mean by that is when something make us feel good, we can go all in on it real quick. But we don't always think, what is this saying to me? What does it mean? It's the same thing that we were talking about with these movies. So when they see Derek Jackson, he's sitting in that nice car. He's got the empty car seat in the back. Girl, he got a kid and he's talking like this. That's firing off all type of chemicals in the brain, all type of dopamine and things that make you feel good and give you hope that there are men out there like him. So when he messes up and he shows his human side, that crushes. I mean, that sends a fatal blow to a lot of women's psychological state. So I hope that the women who have followed him and have been dedicated to him, they get the healing that they need, and that they don't invest so much in these figures, and that they find constructive information from multiple people. Because I know that there's some sisters who are really hurting right now, and it hurts me because I know that at the end of the day, black men and black women, we have to have a constructive relationship, and we can't allow folks like Derek Jackson to be the only voice of what constructive manhood is supposed to be. Because there's black men that don't look like him, that don't got his genetic gifts, that are doing what they need to do, and they don't get uplifted and they don't get respected. And that's why changing the narrative on black men and taking control of it is very important.
I totally agree with that, Brandon. And the other thing is too, I think that shows how in our own circle, what like in our community or in our family, that we're not seeing examples, right, of what we desire. So therefore, you're going to start looking for something external. And if we don't have those, if we're not really knowing about therapy, we're talking a little bit more about therapy in our community now, but it's still a new concept, reflecting on what we've been through in our life. That's a new concept, because a lot of times it's like, well, girl, everybody goes through that. Or, you just got to get your mind right. So I think now we're starting to have those conversations, but there's so much going on right now in society that it makes it very challenging. And I'll say for personal experience, I remember, this is several years ago, there was this couple, and they were in the church, and they were this couple that I had idealized, right? So I saw them as this, like, oh my God, one day when I get married, I want a marriage just like that. And I bought all the books. I bought anything they've put out about relationships, I purchased. And when that relationship dissolved and how it dissolved, I was like, wait, if they can't make it,
right,
what does that say for? And I was hurt. You would have thought I was in a relationship. You would have thought these are my parents. We were going through a divorce because I was going through it, because I felt that, like you said, that emotional connection to them. And I'm like, they're in church, and they're following God, and they're prophets and pastors, and they didn't get the message that something was going on. So how could I get it? And so I think it's so important for us, as you said, to not look at these influencers as any type of, they are humans. They make mistakes just like anyone else. And we can't put all our hopes and dreams in other people. And we have to do the work in and of ourselves to create the type of relationships that we want.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better than that. Influencers are there to inspire you to be better. They're not there to be the example of who you should be.
Right.
And that's where we get in trouble. And we have to understand that people are humans. And when you have money and status, you have more opportunities to do things that you probably should not be doing. And it's more enticing. Temptation is there. Temptation increases when you have status and dollars.
Yeah. And it's important to be honest with that. I mean, we have to be real with what comes with, if you are someone that has those type of means as a man, if you have those type of means, and you have more access, then you have to talk to the reality of that. And that's something that he was not doing. And that did do the women followers that supported him, loved him, that did them a disservice because he wasn't being honest and transparent with them.
Right. Well, he's gonna rebound. He'll be okay, and there'll be a new Derek. I mean, there's already a few guys like that. There's that Sheldon dude. There's guys who do this, and it is a business. They may believe some of it, but please believe when you're before COVID, when you're touring and you're going city to city, church to church, hotel, room to hotel room. There's women there. There's women who watch your video. They slide into your, like I said, they slide into my DM, and I ain't got no blue check. I'm not even out there like that. This stuff happens. Like when you are a Black man who's presenting substance, whether it's true or not, and they don't care if you're married. Like my wife's out, like literally in most of my profile pictures, my wife's sitting there with me. Don't matter. Man, listen. When you are presenting as a Black man that is stable, if we want to use the term high value, sure, I'm not a big fan of that term. But if you're a stable Black man that's producing something constructive or saying something constructive, women want you. And they don't care if you have somebody or not. They don't care if you are a father and you're taking care of 8 kids. They don't care. They want their slice of the pie because there's a scarcity mind. There's actually scarcity in dating, especially when it comes to Black people. And they will take up, and we've heard this concept in our community for years. I would rather have a piece of a man than not have a man at all. And that's what we see manifesting over and over and over in our community.
Excellent said. Thank you so much, Brandon, for the first part of our 3-part series. We'll be back on April 1st. And that's when we're going to be talking about the Black and Asian Alliance. That should be very interesting. I just saw an article that the Asian community is now calling on Biden for funding to combat this anti-Asian violence. So we'll jump into that. That should be interesting.
It's going to be interesting.
Say that again.
They're calling and he's listening.
He is.
Black folks, he ain't doing nothing for us. He literally told us. Man.
He said you are on your own.
Yeah.
But give me your vote.
He literally said, y'all better you better talk to the Latinos because pretty soon they're gonna be the majority population. I was like, damn.
Wow.
Y'all voted for him. I voted for Kanye, but that's all
another show. We got to talk to Brandon a little bit more about that vote. But I would like to thank everyone for joining. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please like and share, and also subscribe to the Healing Element podcast. And please, again, join us on April 1st for the part 2 of this series. I just want to say what we talked about was looking at a community, looking at men, and also looking at women. And what happens is we want to confine Black men to look a certain way. Yeah. But I think when you look at a humanity of a people, you see their flaws, you see their successes. And I think that's one thing that we have to do as a community is we have to begin to embrace all of us. We can begin to work through and heal, but we can't just demonize one gender because they're not, what do I want to say? They're not kind of created as how I guess women or want them to be, if you will. Yeah. And that's not how it should be, right? Everybody is growing, everybody's going through their own journey. And we have to make sure that we support each other through that journey and not take on white supremacist rhetoric, because that is not helpful for us as a community at all. So hopefully what I said came through. I say that with love, but we can't take on the type of language that other people are using that are meant to destroy our communities, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. You have anything else you'd like to say when we close out?
No, just thanks for the people that came through. And if you're watching this later, please share it and subscribe to this channel, the Healing Element Podcast YouTube channel. It's great.
All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Peace, everybody.